There's a bit of orange. There's like green, pea green.
Green.
That's a good one to wear with it. If you want mine, I'll let you wear mine.
I like this one.
I'll
I
share
like
with
all
you.
of them. Except for my IDF one, which I liked more. It's
For
not actually IDF.
Swallow my
but-
gum.
What?
I'm gonna swallow my gum.
Oh, let's stop somewhere. That's so gross. Gross.
You never swallowed gum?
Not as an adult, as a person in the
It's so
world.
much easier. It's like I'm eating sugar.
Come on. Check.
Check. Yep, we're good.
No, you're good. I'm not good.
You're not good? I hear you.
It's light. I'll live with it.
You want to switch sides?
No. I can't lead from that side. I did it once and it was just like uncomfortable.
Seriously?
Yeah, I don't like it. I have to be on this side.
Want me to move this a little more like towards the middle?
It's been 16 years I have to
Here.
be on this side. No, it's good. It's good.
Here, we can middle it.
It's good. I got a big booming voice.
Yes, you do. You're big and booming.
Big and booming. Hi, everyone at home who I'm sure is enjoying this byplay.
Shabbat Shalom.
We will.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome to Temple B'nai Israel. Great to see everyone here this evening who is with us in person and everyone who is at home watching on the stream. Let's turn to each other and say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Do we have a minion?
Yes, we do. We have 10. We have 10.
Choose.
Snap.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let us turn to page 128. In our prayer books, we'll find the words to Ma Yafeh Hayom. How lovely today is Shabbat Shalom.
Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Very nice. Let's turn to page 124 in the middle of the page. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. Together.
May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture.
May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity.
May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet.
May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness.
May this synagogue be, for all who enter, the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life.
Let's turn to page 120, Kabbalat Panim. We welcome Shabbat with the lighting of candles and with Kiddush. We call to come forward Karen Roth and Gary Ford to light the candles and lead us in Kiddush. Let's all rise together in body or spirit.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As your brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
You can do it.
Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, vitzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Vahi Arev Ve Boker Yom HaShishi. And there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. The heavens and the earth were finished, and all their array. On the seventh day God finished the work that God had been doing, and God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei bri ha'olam.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hin hilanu, zikaron lemase v'reshit, ki hu yom tehila lamikrae kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim, ki vanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim, v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hin haltanu. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.
It's the good stuff tonight. I'm pretty sure some grape juice. We can take our seats. We're on page 138 and 139 for the singing of Lecha Dodi. We'll be singing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. And the final verse will rise together and face the door as we greet the Sabbath bride.
Lecha Dodi, likrat kala pene Shabbat, nikabla. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala pene Shabbat, nikabla. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmiyanu el hamyuchad. Adonai echad ushmo echad, L'shem ultiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala pene Shabbat, nikabla. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala pene Shabbat, nikabla. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nilcha, ki hi michor habracha, merosh mikdem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'mashav techila. Lecha Dodi, Ligrat kala pene, Shabbat, nikabla. Lecha dodi, ligrat kala pene, Shabbat, nikabla. Hitoreri, kiva orechumi ori, uri, shirda beri, kevod Adonai aliach nigla, lecha dodi, ligrat kala pene, Shabbat, nikabla. Lecha dodi, ligrat kala pene, Shabbat, nikabla. Boi vishalom ateret bala, gam besimcha uvtuhola, tochemune am segula, boi chala, lecha dodi, ligrat kala pene, Shabbat, nikabla. Lecha dodi, ligrat kala pene, Shabbat, nikabla.
Let's remain standing as we turn to page 146 for the Baruch Hu, our call to worship.
Baruch Hu et Adonai hamivorach. Baruch Adonai hamivorach leolam vaed.
Let's continue on page 149 in the middle of the page. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Together?
This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over?
Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. On page 151. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Together. Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. On the next page, we join together with the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kivod Malhuto, Leolam Vaed.
Let's take our seats. We're on the next page, page 154, as we continue with the Via Hafta.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam Beshiftecha beitecha, uvlechtecha vaderech, uvshachbecha, uvkumecha, ukshartam leod al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot bein einecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha. Leman tizkaru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti ethem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiyot lachem lelohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem.
We're on page 157 in the middle of the page. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. Together, the high heavens
declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love.
From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it's been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed.
Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
On the next page, Mi Chamocha.
Yai lai lai la lai la 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 la. Yai lai lai la 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 la. Ya lai la lai la lai la 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 la. Ya la lai la ya la 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 la. Mi chamocha ba elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, no ra tehilot o sefele, no ra tehilot o sefele. Malechut techara uvanecha, bokei ayom lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, ze eli anu ve'amru, ze eli anu ve'amru. Adonai yimloch leolam vad. Adonai yimloch leolam vad. Yai lai lai la lai la 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 la. Yai lai lai la lai la 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 la. Ya lai la lai la lai la 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 la. Ya la lai la 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 la. Well, you know what? I'm sorry, but Taylor
like
Swift
Lila.
can't have all the fun tonight.
Pretty sure she can. Yeah. No, the tambourine to come out. On page 161. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Together, Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. On page 162, let's continue with a song for Shabbat, Vishamru.
Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. B'ni uvein, b'nei Yisrael, oti leolam, oti leolam. Vishamru, b'nei Yisrael, et ha-Shabbat, la'asot, et ha-Shabbat, lidorotam berit olam. Vishamru, v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat ha-Shabbat, woo, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, lidorotam berit olam. Ki sheshe yamin, asa Adonai, et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz vishamru v'nei Yisrael et hashabat woo la'asot et hashabat lidorotam berit olam vishamru v'nei Yisrael et hashabat woo la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat woo la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam lishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat woo la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam.
Let's turn now to page 164, 165. In an envelope marked personal, God addressed me a letter. In an envelope marked personal, I have given my answer. Let's rise together for the Amidah HaTefillah, page 164 through page 170.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagita hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Velohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Velohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Velohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Hasdei Avot v'Imaot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Lima'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh hakol atah rav lechoshia, Morid hatal, Mehalkel hayim bechesed, Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar michamocha ba'el givurot umido melach melech memid umechayeh umatzmiya Yeshua v'ne'eman atah l'chachayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai Mechayeh hakol Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh ukdoshim b'chol yom yahalelu l'asela Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh.
Please be seated. And Heather gets extra credit because she remembered to change it to the summer insertion this week. Without me even mentioning it, so you get extra credit, an extra gold star. That was wonderful. Passover. Yeah. Passover is when we start transitioning into summer, which, like, in Florida, it sort of makes sense. Like in other places, maybe less so, because like it is sort of getting a little summery. Not so bad, I guess, this week, but but we're getting up there, in temperature again.
And is it Simchat Torah we switched to winter?
Yeah, which makes even less sense in Florida, to be fair, because Simchat Torah in Florida is many things, but it ain't winter. That's for sure. how much winter do we really have? Like by the time we get to Hanukkah, maybe we're getting closer to winter. But yes. So great job. We are now welcoming. We're bringing down the dew as opposed to the winds and the rain and a lot of the good stuff. Okay, cool. Let's keep on keeping on. Let's turn to page 175. And we can read together on the page. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer. Wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands, you are our God, whom alone we serve
in reverence.
Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadecha be'ira na'avod. And on page 177, God of goodness, when we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words. Together,
for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks.
Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. On page 179. Yes? Yes. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. On the bottom of the page, don't stop after beating the swords into plowshares. Don't stop. Together? Go on beating and make musical instruments out of them. Whoever wants to make war again will have to turn them into plowshares first. Baruch atah Adonai hamavarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. We're going to continue now on page 371 as our thoughts turn to those in need of healing. Think of everyone who's in need of healing, whether it's a matter of body, mind, or spirit. I know all of us at sometimes can feel a little broken, a little hurt. And we say this prayer in the hope that we find healing. God brings us healing. We find healing maybe from our friends and neighbors. Wherever that source of tikkun comes from, of repair, that's what we pray for when we say Misha Berach. So let us, in the middle of the page, continue as we pray.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mikor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
We think about this moment, wish healing of body, mind, and spirit to Pat Adamson, Raymond Douglas Alcorn, Marty Bilo, Frankie Clement, Evan Bin, Ann Cole, Mark, Mickey, Benjamin, and Brian Edelstein, Danielle Heyman Feist, Eric Fisk, Philip Gilman, Bob and Carolyn Gold, Jennifer Gousset, Barbara and Buddy Green, Marvin Hollander, Lori Cattleman, Stuart J., Hank Corrin, Wendy Sugarman Krosnoff, Robert Jaffe, Michael Lynch, Dolores Munsick, Ruth Poehler, Lee and Stacy Siegel, Dr. Cindy Steinman, Fred Truax, Pete Tanner, Cheryl Mattis, Elsa Mikosh, and Kevin Stone. If you'd like to mention the name of someone else so you were thinking of who's in need of healing, please speak their name as my eyes meet yours. We take all these names into our hearts with those that we are mentioning at home as we conclude.
Misha Berach Imotenu Mikor HaBracha Leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing, with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Let's now continue with Tefillat Halev, the prayer of the heart.
Yehi yuli ratzon imre fi, vigon libi lifanecha, Adonai suri, Adonai suri, Adonai suri, vigoali, vihi yuli ratzon imre fi, Vigon alibi lifanecha, Adonai suri, Adonai suri, Adonai suri, vigoali, Adonai suri, Adonai suri, Adonai suri, vigoali.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Woodstock, here I come. Everyone grabbed a daf, our daf limud this evening. As some of you here have been very familiar with the Bible study course that we have on Tuesday evening, can well know that Leviticus isn't always the easiest to go. Leviticus has a lot of interesting portions in it, but maybe not the easiest to talk about, with animal sacrifices and like ritual purity laws and skin disease, which this portion this week is thankfully in the middle of those, so we don't have to deal with that. We get to deal with another really, I think, a very interesting narrative of Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, who, as we're going to read, meet an untimely end. Kids do the darndest things. And so Nadav and Avihu don't end well in this, but we're not going to focus on them as much. We're going to focus on their father, Aaron, this evening, and talk a little bit about the value of silence and the value of speaking, and how do we balance that in today's world. So we'll begin with Ecclesiastes, because we have this really powerful text that we read in certain times of the year, especially. We often hear it at funerals, but it is good for other circumstances as well, and not to mention a pretty good song. A season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born and a time for dying. And then, of course, I fast-forwarded here towards the end, a time for ripping and a time for sowing, a time for silence and a time for speaking. And that comes to mind in this week's Torah portion with the story of Nadav and Avihu. Now Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, each took his fire pan, put a fire in it, and laid incense on it. And they offered before Adonai alien fire, which had not been enjoined upon them. And for this, what do they get? A fire came forth from Adonai and consumed them. Thus they died at the instance of Adonai, etc., etc. And Aaron was silent. Vayidom Aharon, Aaron did not speak. Aaron was silent in this moment. So the rabbis take a look at this, Vayidom Aharon, and Aaron is silent, and they go, what does that mean? Like, how could he be silent in this moment? Both of his kids were just zapped. I mean, he has a couple others, but still, two of his kids were just zapped in this really horrific scene, right? And so the question is, like, how do you respond? How does Aaron respond to tragedy? What's his response to this divine justice? The God that he has committed to serving, right, as the high priest, now has taken, his two eldest sons. And so, silent? Like, how could he be silent? I think, he would have a right to be pretty angry, right? To say a few words, perhaps, forget just the grief, the wailing, that would happen in such an instance. But also, as I would say, anger. God, what are you doing? Like what did these two do that deserve this kind of punishment? And so the rabbis, ask, well, how could he be silent? And there are a lot of different answers. Some answers more satisfying than others. There's this idea that Aaron understood that it was God's plan, and so he didn't have anything to say. I don't care for that one. That's why it's not here in our study sheet. But I like this one actually from Abarbanel, because at least it makes sense to me. The meaning of "and Aaron was silent" is that his heart turned to inanimate stone, and he could not raise his voice in tears, eulogizing or mourning like a bereaved father. He could not be consoled by Moses because his soul was gone, as was his speech. For this reason, the verse says, "Vayidom Aharon," that Aaron was silent, right? Yeah.
But don't I remember from Bible study that God commanded him not to mourn? Not to raise his voice?
That comes later, yeah. That comes in following verses where he's commanded not to mourn, which is not really a great command when we think about it either, right? That doesn't really work so well as a command. But the idea that he is supposed to sort of be separate from it because he's a high priest as well. That's part of the issue, right? That even with his kin, he has to be careful about mourning practices and ritual impurity from that idea. So the whole thing is harsh and complex, to say the least, but the idea that somehow Aaron's response of silence, going back to what Karen just said, is that it's seen almost as a positive trait for him. Like he did well in this moment, according to one kind of reading, that he accepted this like harsh judgment and rebuke, sort of standing up, and he sort of did it, and there was almost like a not an uplift to be sure, but I'm saying that he's given credit, I guess, for not having a meltdown, a breakdown at this point, which would be, for all of us, I would think, understandable. I don't think anyone would judge Aaron harshly for not being so keen in this moment about serving God and about sort of what happened to his children, right? But they see a value sort of in his silence that, whether it's stiff upper lip or some idea of self-restraint in the face of injustice and whatever it is, it's seen as a positive trait. Whether it is or not, to be discussed, right? But it is certainly a very tricky passage, to say the least, that he saw this terrible thing happen to his children, and he just was sort of quiet about it. But I could also flip it and say, what's there to say in that moment as well, right? Those of us who have dealt with grief, with trauma, sometimes the answer is silence. That there is nothing to say. For those of us, God forbid, who have suffered a loss, people come and they try to say comforting words, and sometimes it's okay. Sometimes maybe it's less okay for us. People are well intended. Don't get me wrong, but there's a discomfort with silence. We want to fill the space with words. We want to be able to say something of value or of meaning at that time. But sometimes when we're grieving, it's a hand holding a hand. It's an arm around a shoulder, more than it is, just words, because we're uncomfortable with silence. And so I think that, Sandy?
Also with loss, and particularly something traumatic, there's a shock involved. Our bodies kind of shut down.
Yeah.
And, however we want to interpret that. So all I can imagine is him standing there, probably saying a few other words, but, what, like you said, what can you say?
Yeah.
And his body probably, I can't imagine it, but.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Yeah, and I think that's where our Barbanel is coming from too, is that idea just like, what do you want him to say? What do you want him to do? Like he's, in shock in a place of trauma, and we all handle grief differently. We all handle that moment differently, and that's not to judge one way or the other. In this moment, he was silent, because that's maybe was all he was capable of at that moment, was silence. And so this got me thinking about the idea of silence and what does it mean in the Jewish tradition, or what does silence mean? Because, yeah, sorry, Heather, go ahead. Yeah. Remind me of the I've read it, but it was a while ago.
Two boys, one more of a reform conservative, and the other Orthodox. And his father, the Orthodox rabbi, raises him in silence.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. So again, that silence, it has been part of our tradition, and there's a really fascinating passage, in my mind it's fascinating, in Pirkei Avot, which is our ethical sort of moral treatise that we have in the Mishnah. It's a book of aphorisms, of thoughts about what it means to lead a good life, sort of words to live by. So Shimon says, "All my days I grew up amongst the sages, and I didn't find anything good for a person but silence." And so they look at this and go, what does that mean? That nothing but silence. You would think amongst the sages you'd hear a couple words, that might be interesting, some good wise words. But what I think he's trying to say is that it's not about the silence, it's about idle chatter and sort of frivolous talk. That the wise, when they speak, their words have resonance, value, and meaning, because they're a little concise maybe it's brief, maybe they speak when they need to speak, but they aren't just gossiping and chatting away about anything and everything under the sun. That's not so great, So I think that's probably where he's coming from, that when we speak, sages, not sages, whatever it is, but to understand there's value and meaning to our words. And perhaps when we prattle on incoherently, as we're going to see in this next paragraph here, that it lowers us in some way. And so that's where Akedat Yitzchak comes in, another Torah commentary. When a person abuses this power of speech, they deny their superiority over the beasts and call into question the value of their whole existence. It's like a king who presented his servant with a fancy garment only to have the servant drape it over their donkey. The sages of Israel are complimented when it states that they never indulge in idle talk, right? And so the idea, we have this gift of speech, which I would say, some people might disagree, but I'd say, that cogent speech and thought is certainly a separator between us, perhaps, and other forms of life. I know there's room for debate on that, to be fair, but I would hope at least that we have a little bit of a sense of superiority, so to speak, when it comes to these things, in terms of cognitive reasoning and speech. But it's a gift, right? Speech is a gift, and if we abuse it, it makes us, again, less, what do they say here? It denies our superiority, whatever we might say here. The idea that it somehow lowers us. It brings us down to a different level when we just talk for the sake of talking, and there isn't any value, meaning to our words. That there's a value in silence, in contemplation and reflection. This is all well and good. And there's a lot more ideas about silence, but is silence then what we're supposed to be doing? Should we just make this a monastery and just have vows of silence when we come in here? No, I don't think that works. So there is value to also speaking up. So how do we know the times when we're supposed to use our voice and speak up? And I took a couple of examples here. Genesis 18. Would someone like to read Genesis 18? So I'm not doing, but you gotta use the mic. Yeah, no, but I know, but I can't hear you at home.
Genesis 18. Abraham came forward and said, "Will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? What if there should be 50 innocent within the city? Will you then wipe out the place and not forgive it for the sake of the innocent 50 who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty, so that innocent and guilty fare alike. Far be it from you.
Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly?
Very nice. And what's that from? You can actually pass it to Denise because Denise will read the next one. So what's this Genesis passage from? What's the story here? Sodom and Gomorrah, that's right. God says, hey, I'm going to blow up these two cities, a little fire and brimstone. But you know what, before I do that, let me talk to Abe. Let's give Abraham a call, and we'll check in on him, see his thoughts on the matter. And Abraham argues with God, right? Abraham speaks up. He could stay silent to go, it's fine. I don't like these people anyway. Sort of like Noah, right? Because Noah, when God tells Noah of the flood, Noah says, nothing. God's going to wipe away humanity. And Noah's, getting his carpentry set out and he's building the ark. But Noah never says, hey, God, maybe chill a little bit. Let's find another way of handling this. That's not what Noah says. Noah just does his thing. Abraham fights a little bit, right? Abraham, in a reasoned, measured way, pushes back a little bit against God. 50 righteous people. How about that, God? Does that work? Oh, sure, that's great. And what does Abraham do after that? How about 40? 40 righteous people. Can I get 40? Okay, Abraham, 40. 30. What about 30? Can I hear 30? We're going the reverse auction. They're going down. So 30 people. Great. 20 people. Great. 10 people. Great. Now, of course, it's all for naught. There's no righteous minion in Sodom. But that being said, they gave it a shot. Abraham gave it a go. He spoke up when he perceived there was what? Injustice, right? That was the key. He's speaking out against what he perceives rightly as injustice. Will you sweep the innocent away with the guilty? That's not right. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? When it's a matter of justice, we can't stay silent. We have to speak out against injustice. And we don't need just the Torah for this. We have Elie Wiesel's words at the Nobel Prize acceptance speech. And Denise, you want to give that a read?
And then I explained to him how naive we were, that the world did know and remain silent. And that is why I swore never to be silent whenever and wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. Wherever men or women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, that place must, at that moment, become the center of the universe.
Oh, thank you for that. How many of you, is it your first time with that passage? I'm guessing not, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah? I mean, that's one of those passages that like we read often around this time of year because it's Yom HaShoah coming up next week. Holocaust, when we commemorate the victims of the Holocaust and we pledge never again, we continue that pledge. But this idea from Elie Wiesel, the issue is silence, right? Is that the world was silent during the Holocaust, with precious few exceptions. There were some exceptions, but generally speaking, there was a lot of silence that happens. And he says, from this, we have to learn about our community today. For him, 1986, but for us today, as well, that silence doesn't work as a response to injustice, that we have to be able to speak up because when we're silent, we are complicit. That silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented, right? That it is our responsibility when we see injustice, when we see things that go against our values, that we have an obligation to speak up, and not remain silent, because the silence is going to lead to more, oppression, more suffering, unfortunately, a lot of times more death in a way in the world. And so we need to be able to stand up and not stay silent in these moments, to raise our voice, to help those who are in need, who cannot necessarily always help themselves. We have to be the ones, and we can't be neutral. That's the whole thing. Neutrality is not a benefit, in these scenarios. We can say, oh, well, we're not going to do anything. Well, how does that help someone who's being oppressed?
But shouldn't have Aaron spoken up when God killed his two sons? That was an injustice.
I would argue that. So that becomes the question, right? And that's a great point, is that in that moment, is there that idea of, well, this is divine justice and you can't argue with divine justice. I would perhaps disagree with that statement, right? But I'm me, and I would want an explanation. I'm sort of more in the Job model. It's like, God, you got to give me an explanation for this, because all this suffering, I didn't earn this. Thank you. I'd like a little, just a little. Give me a call, give me a jingle jangle. Let me know what's going on here. Because this ain't right. This is a problem. And so for Aaron, it's like he almost accepts this divine justice, perhaps a bigger man than I am, but I would just not, I think, be as amenable to saying, oh, well, God's will, take him away. No. I think I'd probably be a little more irked and have things to say. And especially, again, with the idea of what kind of justice is this, right? What kind of justice is this? What kind of point are we trying to make? Yeah, Heather, you had a comment? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the issue comes in, right, is that, like, maybe a warning shot might have been okay, but God was going for the very direct, because that's right, a point was being made, right? And then but I don't think they had any idea what was happening, and nor thought that this would be, the end, so to speak. I think it goes back to the question of making meaning, right? We talk about it often. I think religion helps us try to make meaning of the world, and in the face of tragedy and trauma, we have to make meaning. And you go back to, and I hate using it as a reference point, but it is coming up this week. Next week is the Holocaust. And that after the Holocaust, we had to make meaning as a people, right? Some people who survived the Holocaust never stepped foot in a synagogue again. They were like, you know what? I had endured this. God let this happen to me. What am I doing here? Like, that's not a thing. Other people doubled down and became more religious, but they had to find a way to justify it to themselves. People have heard the story, right? The Elie Wiesel story about, was it Elie Wiesel? Oh, the story about how they put God on trial in the camps. You've heard that story before, where they basically put God on trial and said, what do we do to deserve this? We've read our Torah, we've tried to live good lives, and what could we possibly have done to deserve this kind of fate? If you are just, if you are, sacred, holy, good, whatever word we want to use, what the heck? Like, why are we here? And they had the trial, and what was the result of the trial? They found God guilty of abandoning the covenant and of not, keeping up God's end of the bargain, to the Jewish people. And the story concludes, and you know what they did right after that? They prayed. They did Ma'ariv afterwards. And I've heard that story, before, and then I happened to hear it from Elie Wiesel personally, because I took a class with him in college, and he said that what people don't always remember about that story, he said, was that they think that's like the happy ending, that like we just like prayed Ma'ariv to like reaffirm our faith in God, and he said, no, we prayed Ma'ariv because that's what we did as Jews, but it wasn't like a happy minyan. It wasn't like, Mazel Tov, and they weren't like having a great time. They prayed because that's what they did. And that was their coping mechanism. How they got through the experience is routine, is tradition. This is what we do. It wasn't like all was forgiven between the divine and the Jews of Auschwitz. It was more, this is what we're going to pray. And prayer can be a form, as Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel teaches us, prayer can be a form of protest. We're going to pray regardless of how we feel, or we're going to pray because we want to make a point. And it was not a time for silence. They could have gone to bed. They could have done, the trial, guilty, fine, forget this, we're done being Jewish. But they said, no, even though we're mad at God, we're still in relationship with God. And we're still going to pray, and we're still going to connect and try to find some way to have this make sense to us. And there were some Jews who were able to do that, some Jews who weren't able to do that. Either answer is correct. You can't judge it, in that moment. But it was powerful, I think, that idea of it was time for them to speak, and they had to say words, and they had to be able to try to figure out how to make sense of the indefensible, how to make sense of the worst, one of the worst tragedies in human existence, worst crimes in existence. How do you make sense of it? And I think we still struggle with that today, to be honest, which is why we need Yom HaShoah, why we need to come together for commemoration, why we still try to, even though they're hard, but to listen to the stories of the survivors, those who have spoken up. Because we know many of us probably know people who went through the Holocaust and never wanted to talk about it, never wanted to utter one word. For them, silence was the answer. Because how do you speak the unspeakable? How do you try to describe the horrors? And that was a choice. And again, can't judge it. That was a choice. Vayidom, like that person was silent. And others who needed to share the story for the historical record, yes, but for themselves. To say, this is what happened to me. This was my experience, and it shouldn't be forgotten, right? Yeah, Heather?
I was just going to say, I'm going to think out loud. What a wonderful hospital lesson for the older kids on Sunday is to do that mock debate over, the discussion of God, having that discussion.
Wow, that is powerful. Yeah. I'm very proud that our kids, our older kids this week, or at least not our high school kids, but, they're going to the museum on Sunday, and they're going to spend some time and, take a tour and, have a lesson there, because it's important, and that's part of their mitzvah, so to speak, of that day, because it is a mitzvah to remember. We know that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. It's a mitzvah to remember, right, and it's a mitzvah to learn, and so I think that's a really impressive thing. With that said, I want to finish up with Rabbah Sarah Hurwitz. Rabbah Sarah Hurwitz was the first woman to be ordained in the Orthodox movement. And so she didn't take the title of rabbi. She took the title of Rabbah, and she does a lot of great community work. I've heard her speak a couple times, and it's always been very interesting. And so I thought she would have some nice words to take home with us. This triad of speaking, silence, and action is a methodology that we must each employ when advocating for change, for righting wrongs and bringing justice to our world. When we try to better our world and to continue God's creative work, we must know when to speak out, to make noise and shed light on any issue. We must know when not to talk, to remain silent, and control the anger and frustration within us. And I'd also add here my own words, and to listen to the voices of others to better understand. And then we must know when to act, to turn the sounds and silences into action. There's a time to talk out, a time to remain silent, and a time to act. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We're now going to turn with those words to page 570. On page 570, we're going to continue our upwards count to Mount Sinai. We're going to count the Omer. And so this is a tradition that dates back to biblical times, the idea that we are to count the time between Passover and Shavuot. It is 50 days in total. 50th day is Shavuot, the revelation of the Torah at Sinai. So we take the spiritual sort of journey together. Each day is supposed to be a step up in holiness, that we are coming closer to the divine, coming close to Mount Sinai. And so we say in the middle of the page, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sifirat ha'omer. Our praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to count the Omer, Hayom Tisha Yom. And so this is the 9th day of the Omer, that we are 1 week and 2 days into the Omer. Still got a little while to go. But every Friday we're going to try to remember to count the Omer. And so now that we have counted the Omer, day 9 is, of course, tomorrow, because we're in the evening, but tomorrow will be day 9. We're going to turn now to page 576. Though Passover is over, it's traditional that at last day of Passover to say Yizkor, to think about those that we love, the memories of those that we have lost. You might need a different prayer book depending on which prayer book you have. The thick prayer book is going to have, I don't know if the thin one has it, but the thick prayer book should have that on page 576. So we're going to do this like an abbreviated Yizkor, and it's a meaningful ritual, I think, and it gives us all opportunity to remember our loved ones during this sacred season. And so we're just going to begin with Psalm 23. And I'll begin with a little Hebrew, then we'll join together in English. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai ro'i lo eksar, benot deshe yarbitzeni, al me menuchot yenahaleni, nafshi yeshovev. Yancheni v'maglet tzedek l'ma'an shemo. Gam ki elech begitz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha u'mishantecha hema yenachamuni. Ta'arok lefanai shulcha neged sorai. Tishanta v'Hashem en roshi kosir vaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai. Beshavti beveit Adonai le'orech yamim. Together, a psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I lack nothing. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me to water in places of repose. God renews my life. God guides me in right paths as befits God's name. Though I walk through a valley of deep darkness, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table for me in full view of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My drink is abundant. Only goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai for many long years. On page, actually, let's turn to the next page here, page 577. It's not a turn, you just sort of look to the other side. Psalm 121. Esa enai el heharim me'ayin yavo ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim ba'aretz. The English together. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from God, the maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian. Adonai is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard your life. God will guard your life. Adonai will guard your going and coming, now and forever. We're going to turn now to page 580. And we're going to take a moment of silent reflection as we continue with Silent Yizkor, recalling the memories of all of those that we love, that we have lost, and taking a moment to reflect on their lives, their memory, all that they have meant to us and to others. So let's continue just for a few moments with a Silent Yizkor.
Eli, Eli, shelo yigomer leolam, hakol v'hayam, Rishru shel hamayim berak hashamayim tefilat hadam hakol v'hayam. Rishru shel hamayim berak hashamayim tefilot hadam.
On page 582, let's rise together for El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, sheochen b'meromim, hamse menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina, im kedoshim u'tehorim kezohar harakia mazhirim, lenishmat yakirenu shehalchu le'olamam. Ba'al harachamim yastirem b'seter kenafav le'olamim, v'yitzror b'torah hachayim et nishmatam, Adonai hu nachalatam, v'yanuchu b'shalom al mishkavam, v'nomar Amen. Together in English, fully compassionate God on high, to our loved ones who have entered eternity, grant clear and certain rest with you, in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold them in the embrace of their wings. Secure their souls in eternity. Adonai, they are yours. They will rest in peace. Let us say Amen. On page 486, we continue standing as we continue with Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, la'teit gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kagoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishpahot ha'adama, shelo sam kelhenu kahem, vigor aleinu kichol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'ne'eman v'haya Adonai v'melech ol kol ha'aretz bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad.
Let's take our seats. We're on page 597. Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We are in the Shloshim period for the memory of Bernadette Balcom, mother of Rosemary Buckwalter and grandmother of Elizabeth Buckwalter. And we send our condolences to Rosemary, to Rick, and the entire family. And we are also in the Shiva period for the memory of Doris Buddy Berger, mother of former president of the temple, Mimi Crystal. We think of those who died during this last year. Mary John Resch, Liesel Schick, Linda Laban Slavinsky, Jay Roth, Fran Brickman, John Conway, Michael Vereb, Janice Lederer, Bernice Lipman, Eric Adler, Ezra Bobo, Richard Corwin, Dr. Sonia Linke, and Barbara Finkel. And we also think of those who died of the season in years past, or during the yurt sites of Bluma Badenholtz, Leon I. Cohen, Judy Fine, Herman Freirich, Roberta Goldberg, Nathan Goldman, Milton Gordon, Samuel Harfenist, Austin Horton, Marlene Ispitz, Eugene Israel, Sylvia Casper, Charlotte D. Kirstein, Ira Krantz, Milton Levin, Gary Miller, Hilda Mintz, Donna Orns, William Pepper, Kay Pollock, Edith Rothstein, Ruth Rubin, William Schechter, Lee Schwartz, Molly Sadikoff, Rebecca Stein, Joel E. Stein, Samuel Weinstein, Irving Weinstock, Robert Wolfson, and Dina Zahn. Is there anyone else observing a yurt site saying Kaddish for any reason? Let's all rise together on page 498 for Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach erutei v'yamlich malchutei, Bechayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Bagala v'izman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam l'omei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitrumam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei dekudesha barichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush v'chata v'nechemata, da miran b'yalma v'imru Amen. Yehei shaloma rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, Hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to Israel, and all over the world. Let's together we say Amen. Amen. Please be seated. It's now my pleasure to invite up one of our co-presidents, Sandy Sunter, for a few synagogue announcements.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Everyone here tonight with us in our temple, and everyone celebrating Shabbat at home. Shabbat Shalom. Well, we have lots going on here at Temple, but first we need to say thank you, Rabbi, that your sermon tonight, so timely. I've had several conversations over this weekend with some people in our community who are very worried and nervous about some future types of things coming down the pike. And what I walked away with is that, for me personally, I can't be silent, and I need to make my feelings known, as well as I know many of us will be doing that for some of our loved ones and our friends and our family right now. Okay, with that said, Mitzvah Day is Sunday. You still are able to come and show up on Sunday. 9 o'clock is check-in. 9:30 we'll start our projects, and then there will be lunch provided by the Brotherhood at 12:30. This is, again, an opportunity to see people in our congregation you may have not seen for a while, and to get to do some wonderful projects. Personally, I'm going to go and pick up stuff on the street. I'm going to go do that this year, work outside. But they have some other... What's so funny? Isn't that... I think it's wonderful. What I said. But anyhow, it's a wonderful time, and our committee's been working hard. There are some lovely projects. So please, if you haven't signed up, please come, show up, and help make sandwiches for peanut butter and jelly, etc. I'm going to come back to that. And again, we have a program that is coming on April the 24th, kind of following on what I sort of led with today. We are having a program, Love is Love. This is an opportunity to get more resources and to learn on how we could be a better ally and advocate for our LGBTQ plus community. So please, it's an opportunity for conversation, to learn education. It is free and open to the community, but you can click on our website to RSVP so that they would like to know just at least how many people will be coming. And please tell people in your communities and other circles that you run in, and perhaps they would like to attend as well. I would like to do that too. Then our gala is coming on April the 29th. Still selling tickets and seats for that. It's going to be a lovely evening, dancing, dining, some interesting surprises for people. There'll be different things for people to look at and be involved in. Please think about coming. It's going to be a lovely evening. We'll be honoring our 74th anniversary here at Temple B'nai Israel, and Barbara Bloom and her whole, I think just about her whole family will be coming. So please come, and it's $75 a person, and that's for food and open bar and just being together. Just what more can you want? So please, if you haven't RSVP'd, please do so, and we look forward to seeing you there. And I'll tell the other things. The other thing I forgot to say, thank you, Heather, for once again, doing our music with us this week. Appreciate it. Thank you. Wanted to share this with you tonight. At the Passover Seders, where many of us gathered several nights ago, we retold the story of our people's escape from Egypt and our journey toward freedom. It's a story that is millennia old, yet it remains fresh and relevant because our resharing of the story at every Passover recenters in our collective memory. Remembrance is an intentional and communal act of finding meaning and infusing in it Jewish life. Remembrance is a key to Jewish resilience. We set aside days of observance on our calendar to remember the lessons that the past can teach us for today, and to celebrate watershed moments that point towards a more hopeful, vibrant future. Over the next 2 weeks, 3 such days of remembrance will call us together and gather to retell stories, explore their meanings, and strengthen the bonds of memory that connect us with people. So one of those will be our Yom HaShoah celebration. And Yom HaShoah, we remember the 6 million Jews and millions of non-Jewish people who were murdered in the Holocaust. We light memorial candles, listen and learn survivor stories, and restate our vow to never forget and to never weaken our resolve to fight the hatreds that can metastasize into atrocities. We will be meeting at Congregation Beth Shalom as a community. I found the date. I can't find the date. Huh? Monday night. Oh my goodness, Monday night, please. At 7 o'clock. We're asking people to register if you can, again, to go online. And it says, please join us at Congregation Beth Shalom. The donations will be made towards Gulf Coast Jewish Family Services, their Holocaust Survivor Program. And all donations will be matched dollar for dollar. And there'll be a candle lighting service and a speaker by the name of Rosalind Franken, who will be speaking. So it should really be a lovely evening if you haven't registered for that. Please do. One of the other holidays, celebrations, I guess, is Yom Ha'atzmaut. We will also be having a celebration Wednesday the 26th here at 6:30 at Temple B'nai Israel. We'll have a celebration of Israel's independence featuring uniquely Israeli culture, food, crafts, dance, and more. So please, there is, again, in our weekly e-blast, if you want more information, to call Dean Hershkowitz from Israel Bonds. And the other one that they did not talk, this particular person didn't write, was Yom HaZikaron. We remember the thousands of men and women who gave their lives defending Israel and the victims of terror attacks. Many Yom HaZikaron observances in Israel include a reading of a poem in Hebrew called The Silver Platter. The title is a reference to a quote from Israel's first president, Chaim Weizmann, who said, "A state is not handed to a people on a silver platter," a sobering reminder of the sacrifice that creating and sustaining our Jewish homeland has entailed. These are words by Nancy Greer, President of the Jewish Federation of Seattle, and wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Sandy. And now let's continue with our closing song, Oseh Shalom.
Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'imru, Imru, Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael.
Let's rise together for Motzi.
Ha-motzi lechem in haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Thank you, God. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, ha-motzi lechem min haaretz, b'tei avon. Somewhere.
We'll find it. We'll find it together.
We're hunting for snipes.